Hello, Dig Nation. It's Stanfield Gray, your fearless host of South Pod, Rise of a Region. South Pod is the South's top tech podcast, where executives, founders, funders, and ecosystem supporters explore what it takes to succeed in the South and beyond. South Pod is produced by Dig South Tech Media. The podcast is pre-recorded and captured in both video and audio. Southpod can be found wherever you download podcasts and is broadcast on Facebook Live. That's Facebook Live and YouTube. New episodes are posted at digsouth.com and YouTube. Learn more, sign up for our e-news, and keep up with the South's top tech news at digsouth.com. Now on with the show. Today, we have one of the finest, if not the finest, startup ecosystem builders in the South, and he's making it all happen from Wilmington, North Carolina. Joining us on South Pod, we have Dig Nation member Jim Roberts, founder of Rojo Octo Ecosystem Consulting and WALE. I'll let him tell you about the WALE Angel Network in a minute. In a nutshell, it's a small group of North Carolina-based angel investors who invest in startups across the Wilmington region. It's supported by Network for Entrepreneurs in Wilmington, and Rojo Octo is Jim's ecosystem consulting firm that is currently working in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Welcome to South Pod, Jim. Let's dive right in. Where in the world does today's podcast find you, and what's on your plate this week?
I am in the brand new loading dock co-working space in Wake Forest, North Carolina, which, if you're not familiar with Wake Forest, that is not Winston-Salem. That is 20 minutes north of Raleigh. So they have a brand new, beautiful co-working space here, and I'm here for the day and happy to be with you, sir.
I love it. That's Wake County, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a powerhouse scene that they have, you know, with the Raleigh Triangle, of course, and what's happening in Winston-Salem, and then Charlotte, of course, and then branching all the way across to Wilmington, where you are. You know, explain for us a little bit, you know, the evolution of that ecosystem, you know, in your time exploring it, what it looks like, what some of the strengths are, some of the opportunities.
Yeah, so most people give credit to the opening of the ecosystem in 2013 when the UNCW CIE, the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, was opened. And I was the first executive director, and they took a pretty ugly real estate building and real estate school and turned it into the first co-working space in Wilmington. And most people really credit that as the start of the formal ecosystem. And we're just rocking and rolling. We obviously are now 9 years old as an ecosystem, and we're ranked this year by Startup Genome as the 81st best emerging ecosystem in the world. And more importantly, we're the third smallest US city on that list, and the third best ecosystem in North Carolina. And we're very proud of that because that means we leapfrogged an awful lot of cities in 9 years. And so what's happening is exactly what happened in Charleston. You guys had some exit events with Benefit Focus and Blackbaud and those companies. We had 3 exits last year. We had Encina, which is what we're most known for in Wilmington, which is a spin-out of Live Oak Bank. We had a company called Untapped, which had a private equity acquisition, and then a company called PlayerSpace, which had an acquisition as well. And you know that's what creates the FOMO of, I wish I had invested in those companies, and what is next that I can put my money into? And that's where we are today.
So what is that, you know, for people who aren't familiar with exits, which could be by way of an acquisition or going public or any number of events like that, what does that mean for a young startup entrepreneur, a young founder?
Well, what we're actually hoping happens is the employees of those companies then get that itch to become an entrepreneur. And since they've learned from the best management in town, maybe they have a foot up on the competition on, you know, how to grow a company. And those exits, of course, means there's a whole new generation of wealth. There is potential new angel investors in town that understand the process of growing and investing and the time it takes to get to an exit. And really a sense of optimism, if you will, is since that had never happened before in Wilmington. Yes, there had been a Live Oak, and PPD is also publicly traded, but PPD really started somewhere else, and Live Oak is a bank. So Live Oak Bank, and it's the #1 SBA lender in America. And so these three companies were a very exciting proof that the ecosystem worked, and we're ready for more.
You know, I love you commenting on optimism like that, because optimism, hope, things like that are hard to quantify. And I don't think anybody's really discussed it on the podcast before, but it is really important to gaining momentum. People, you know, if people can't see themselves in a job or see themselves scaling a company, it's harder for them to envision that. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, and I think on the entrepreneur side, if you don't have optimism in your city, why wouldn't they just move away? I mean, if nobody believes in their startup, then I'm going to move my startup to Atlanta or, you know, Austin, like everyone else is, or Miami suddenly is this really strong ecosystem. Why wouldn't you move your startup somewhere else? So if it's just cynicism and it's very hard to get things done in the city, then your entrepreneurs are going to relocate. We've got a new story that you're aware of called Fetch. You know, he moved his company sight unseen. He had never been to Wilmington before. Sight unseen, moved to Wilmington. And my favorite story is we were exchanging emails during his whole move in the U-Haul. So every time he'd go to a restaurant or a hotel, we would exchange emails on, this is what I need to see when I get there to help me grow my company. And I guess that's why he came to Wilmington.
Share
that's one of my favorite stories.
We've covered Fetch in our e-news, digsouth.com, but yeah, share for us a little bit about that company and what makes them unique.
Sure. So what they're doing is every time you go to a hotel, or it could be a cruise ship in the future, you know, how are you communicating with the hotel? If you are, let's say you're a frequent, this is your 10th time that you've been there, do you get a 25% notice on a steak dinner that night that you get a sudden discount because you're loyal visitor? Or hey, I'm at the poolside and nobody's out here, can somebody send me 3 towels for my kids or something? And so it's a way to communicate back and forth without being too overbearing, if you will, from the hotel side, giving you a ping every 30 seconds. That's not what this is about. This is really a two-way communication to where you are and really how you want to improve your experience.
It's kind of the ultimate digital concierge that knows where you are at all times. I love it. Right. So you have a long list of personal contributions to the Wilmington startup ecosystem in the last 9 years and more. What are some of your all-time favorite moments or companies, in addition to the Fetch story?
Well, I mean, Untapped has to be my favorite story. Is a father and son team that I didn't know before I moved to Wilmington, and 5 years later they have a new downtown headquarters, and they've hired 100 people. And, a year later, they have an exit. And these are, jobs that Wilmington had never seen before. Stanfield, you're very familiar with Wilmington. There was always kind of people laugh when I say this, but the boat owners and the people that work for the boat owners, there wasn't much of a middle class.
Right.
And I think Untapped and Encino and Aperture and these companies have created jobs that are $85,000 to $115,000, and you can live really well on that income in Wilmington, North Carolina. And it's getting more expensive by the day. We can't hide that, but that's my favorite story. Now, some of the events that we've had, you've written about them, or I've written in Dig South about them. An event that I created at your Dig South event was called my Mystery Startup Theater. And there was a Raleigh entrepreneur that presented at Dig South, and he had a very exciting technology, but I thought he was a poor presenter. And I said, what a missed opportunity, because I think the ego of the entrepreneur got in the way, and the founder thought he had to be the one to give the pitch. And I thought, what if there was somebody better on that team that could have given the pitch? So I created an event in my mind called Mystery Startup Theater, where I arranged for 3 entrepreneurs to get to know 3 mentors a month in advance of the event. And they had to give a download of where the company is. But what we did was we let the mentor give the pitch in front of the audience instead of the founder, to see what kind of reaction we could get from the crowd, because these 3 entrepreneurs were getting really frustrated about the lack of capital that they were attracting. And I thought, if a mentor gave a better pitch and the investors out of the crowd said, I would write that check right now, that's what I was trying to get to. And that's what happened. And so we hooked up 3 companies, and the first presentation was absolutely amazing. And so we kind of proved that concept.
I may have to import that to Charleston. It's such a great idea, and it was inspired at Dig South. We may need to replicate that with your help.
Just buy me a beer and I'll give you the rights to it. You know, we're good. It's all right.
I love it. Okay, so then let's pull back on the lens for a minute and think about, how does the North Carolina statewide ecosystem stack up to, say, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida? What are you seeing there? You're doing some work in Myrtle Beach, I understand, consulting, helping them build out an ecosystem.
Right.
What do you see out there if you pull back the scope a little bit and you're taking a southeastern view?
Well, what I'm really proud of, and what I would suggest that other ecosystems do, is try to replicate what we've done in what I call the coastal corridor.
Okay.
In 8 years since the beginning of our ecosystem, since I moved from Raleigh, Durham to Wilmington, is how can you connect to those bigger cities and the resources that are there? I'm not a rocket scientist, Stanfield, you know this, but I mean, the best thing that I've done is I've invited the Raleigh-Durham investors to come to Wilmington, and I have all of my events on Thursday, which means they make it a weekend at their beach house. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm doing, right? I've invited 80, I want to say 84 now investors over the last 8 years, and we've been turned down by 1 investor. And so, since we didn't have the capital in town already, why not just use the capital from other cities? We're within a 3-hour drive to Raleigh Durham, so that any investor will take that within their portfolio. They don't want to get on a plane to go to New York necessarily, but if it's within a 3-hour drive, they don't mind. Well, the entrepreneurs are normally going to go to the investors anyway, right? So, that's the best thing we've done. We've connected to what's called the CED, which is the Council for Entrepreneur Development. We've connected our entrepreneurs to the North Carolina Technology Association. We've connected our entrepreneurs to NC IDEA, which has 2 grant cycles every year for a $50,000 non-dilutive grant. And those are the best things that we've done, because as soon as our entrepreneurs can attract those resources from bigger cities, it creates that FOMO of, once again, a company that I wasn't paying attention to as an investor is suddenly making noise in a bigger city, meaning they're out competing, startups in Raleigh, Durham, or wherever. And so that's what I would suggest to your viewers who are looking at their ecosystem going, we've got to ramp things up here because we're falling further and further behind. Atlanta obviously is doing really well. We all wish we had a David Cummings, who built the Atlanta Tech Village and is putting his own money into startups. We all wish they had that person. We're paying attention to Miami and how they're attracting the California people that are choosing not to go to Austin. Maybe they're going to Miami as well. Mm-hmm. I'm certainly paying attention to what Nashville is doing. I think Nashville is a very interesting opportunity, because if you look at California going to Austin, then the Austin people that feel priced out, they're going to Nashville. But what happens when Nashville feels priced out? Where do those people go? Are they going to Chattanooga? Are they going to Asheville? Are they going to Knoxville? Where are they going to go? And I think that's a really interesting opportunity for North Carolina. So I'm me, I send you articles almost every day. So I'm really studying and curating this information and trying to share it with the people that I work with every day.
That's a very valid point too, that it isn't always bad when a city grows and scales up their ecosystem because of that spinoff effect for another city. It's why Greenville and Next have been successful, because Atlanta is successful, Charlotte is successful, and people start looking at Hendersonville if they can't afford Asheville.
Right.
And so, I've been involved, as I'm sure you have, and, with various government related groups or economic development groups that are really trying to do something in very small towns. And it's very difficult to do that from within. Sometimes you need that kind of multiplier effect from only a couple hours away for people to take a look. But there are other assets in the mix here. So, universities, for example, how important are they in your mind to building out these ecosystems? And I know you've been able to do have a lot of success without much government support. But what's your take on that kind of triad of private companies scaling, succeeding, government economic development groups, and universities?
Well, I think Stanfield, even if you're looking at a rural community, it really gets down to who's willing to spend political capital, relationship capital. Are you willing to put your name on the line to help an entrepreneur that you've only known for 2 weeks, right? Are you going to introduce them to one of your best contacts that if it went south, there's some consequences to it? And Stanfield, I don't have that option. That's something I have to do. Because an entrepreneur, you cannot slow down an entrepreneur. If you are hesitating in any way, they're going to move on to somebody who will help them. So, yeah, I mean, in Wilmington, they're not going to like that I say this, but of course, UNCW is not a tier 1 university like an NC State, Duke, or UNC. Those 3 schools get $1 billion every year or more of federally funded research. We don't have that kind of asset. As well as I do, you have to speak in the tone of the entrepreneurs. If there's a 4-letter word said at your stage, it just flies. I usually am the one who sets that tone. I'm usually the first one that says, the 4-letter word that, you have to go to church for on Sunday. But, that's the tone that the entrepreneurs talk in.
That's right. Yeah. The hustle and the everyday experience they have is very real. It's not an academic driven mindset. So that's really important to note. Hey there, Dig Nation. It's Stanfield Gray here with big news. The 10th anniversary of Dig South Tech Summit is coming this May 11th through the 13th to the College of Charleston TD Arena. Check out details at digsummit.com. Think emerging technology, scalable business, digital marketing, fintech, Web3, crypto, NFTs, health tech, and much more. Come check it out. Meet innovators, entrepreneurs, executives, founders, and other leaders in the tech space. Have a blast in Charleston. It's beautiful in May. Come check it out at digsummit.com. That's digsummit.com. Now, back to Southpod. Well, here's a fun question. So let's climbing into the time machine. What was that moment in your life early on that just, either kind of fostered this love for entrepreneurship and founders, or set you personally on a course to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So what happened in the year 1999 in Charlotte, North Carolina, which was claiming that it was the next big city of the New South, none of the .coms were happening. There were Lending Tree was really the only .com in all of Charlotte. And I was like, how can you claim that you're a modern economy if, every story in every magazine and newspaper is about a .com in Austin or Silicon Valley and Atlanta to a point at 1999. And I was just like, this isn't happening in Charlotte, and why not? And Stanfield, you know, as a leader that you have been named as, is that if you look around and no one's doing the solution, you're
Right.
probably the one that needs to be the solution because you see it better than anyone else. And you must have that fire in the belly to do it. And that's how I created this organization in Charlotte in the year 2000, was called First Round. And every, third Tuesday of the month, I would take over a restaurant and we would have a keynote speaker and we would have sponsors, and that just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the truth is I was a website salesman at the time, and none of my prospects were buying the websites because they didn't have any money as entrepreneurs. And so I said, well, how can I help these young entrepreneurs who have these ideas but they don't have any money, and how can I get them to buy from me? And I thought, well, if I hold these events for entrepreneurs and they meet an investor at my event, surely because I help them get the money, then they would buy the website for the company that I was working with. And that's honestly how I got into starting an entrepreneur support organization and starting doing entrepreneur development 22 years ago.
Great story. Yeah, I mean, it's similar here. My first startup was a company that was trying to do two things. One, just sell template-based websites around Charleston in 1999. And a lot of businesses did not get it. They said tourists pick up the city paper. Nobody goes to a website. There were no smartphones at the time, and it was very difficult to sell a $400 website.
Right.
in that era to a successful business. And then in addition to that, we were going to revolutionize the business card. We called them digi business cards. And they were those little small discs. But we would shoot a video of you, embed that on the disc, and print your name and title and company. And you would, the theory was you would hand that out. And there was no YouTube at the time. This is pre-YouTube. And so, had we waited a few years, maybe we could have built something based on that off YouTube. But doing that from a town like Charleston, like Wilmington, like Charlotte, and that first kind of during the early .com era, before that bubble burst, people have no idea how difficult that was and how people looked at you like you were crazy. Fast forward to today, and everybody's like, of course we have all of these things. Who doesn't use those? Right.
And print is almost dead.
Print's dead. The media, the same media that scoffed at you and laughed at you, they've been completely dismembered by Facebook and Google advertising. And so it's it was pretty obvious to anybody who was just looking at California and Silicon Valley and New York what was coming our way. That tsunami. And I was more shocked that other people couldn't see that, because it didn't seem like it required any crystal ball. It was like, these people are raising, $100 million. I mean, and Amazon stayed under the radar without paying taxes for so long. It was amazing, and it was obvious they were gobbling up every bookstore, and, and it was just, today it seems so apparent, but it really wasn't then, was it?
It wasn't if you don't think that way. And I think you and I are a little bit more visionary that way, that you and I can see the trends, not before they happen, but as they're happening. And if I always had a theory that Charlotte would catch on to a trend at 49% when the rest of America was at 49% of already understanding the trend, then it would catch on in Charlotte, but it would have such a short lifespan because, by that time the trend is over. And so, yeah, I've always thought of it that way. And it's, we're doing now, probably as you are, doing much more video promoting our events, and we just got a grant for that. And we're trying to, because we had a serious drop off of our newsletter last year, of about 20% less readership, and I couldn't understand. The content was the same, but I guess people are, taking in their content differently, and so we started using this video, and our newsletters are back up even stronger than they ever were.
Fantastic. Yeah. I mean, last year it was just hard for anybody to understand what the kind of macro trends were that were driving people in different directions as we all adjusted to remote work. And, Of course, tech companies are already very accustomed to remote and Zoom and those kind of meetings, but the rest of the economy hadn't adapted to it as readily. What are some of the bigger trends that you're seeing now coming out of the pandemic? Hopefully, fingers crossed. What are some that you think are permanent, and what are some that were temporary, and we really can't throw the baby out with the bathwater yet?
Well, I bet you're seeing this too, is we're starting to get some companies that are thinking of, where do our employees really want to live?
Yes.
Yeah, we just had an expansion of an amazing company called Suzy out of Brooklyn, New York. And by the way, Kevin Durant, the NBA All-Star, is one of their angel investors.
Okay.
And no one would have ever thought this company would have expanded to Wilmington. But their CTO had already been living there. They recruited him to add him to Suzy. He became their CTO. And they said, hey, where do you want to have your technology office with your employees? And he's like, well, of course, I want to have them at the beach. And so we announced 40 jobs at $140,000. And Stanfield, those jobs have never, ever, ever been in Wilmington before. No one's ever paid $140,000 in Wilmington before. Right. And again, in Wilmington, you can live really good on $140,000. And so that really woke some people up. I've got another company who's saying the same thing, is my employees don't want to be stuck on I-40 in Raleigh. But they're already moving to the beach and now working virtually. What if I, created a Wilmington office for them to work from? So you're starting to see some of the employers moving their offices to where the employees want to live, not just where the CEOs have their families and their schools and they're reluctant to move out. But can you create, an office that's 2 hours away, that's maybe a little nicer in the, less traffic and better weather? And if someone's from Ohio, do they really want to move to Raleigh, or would they find Wilmington more appealing?
Yeah, we're seeing that too, of course, in Charleston and along the coast, of people opting to move here during the pandemic, and now trying to sort out, what does that mean? Are they going to go in 2 days a week somewhere? And which I had friends that commuted from Charleston to New York weekly. And now if they don't have to go in more than 2 days a week, that's easy for them. They could actually make that happen without as much stress as they were encumbering before.
And it makes life a little cheaper too.
Yeah.
I'm glad you
brought up the
salaries can go a little further if they live in a cheaper place. I mean, New York's very expensive. So if those employees can keep their salary, but they're working and living in a cheaper part of the country, then it makes that dollar just go that much further.
No doubt. And I'm glad you brought up Kevin Durant, because I think it's really interesting to look at the NBA in general, has always been sort of a cutting edge league where people were a little open to it. They were early adopters of Twitter and leveraging that. Players were early in the NFT game with the dunks and with NBA 2K, our kids are very accustomed to tokens of, skins and players. And so this year at Dig South, we're bringing in Melissa Proctor, who's the CMO of the Atlanta Hawks and State Farm Arena, to talk about players as influencers, players as creating their own NFTs, and players as investors. And I know there was also a group at every NBA All-Star game that does a sports pitch where they have players and player reps come to the pitch event. Most of the apps are somewhat sports related, but a lot of them are also fintech plays. And it's a very real integration of this digital economy through the players. So I think there are a lot of opportunities now, where we can think about investors differently. It's not necessarily the old guy in the tie with the country club money in the South coming to the table. It could be your local superstar of the hockey team.
Who's leading a lot of that is Shaquille O'Neal.
That's right.
Shaquille was a big investor, I believe, in Google. I know he was an investor in Ring, because he tells that story a lot if you check him out. I recently saw Shaq and Gary Vee on a podcast together. Now That's some humor there. That's a lot of laughs. But yeah, Shaq's a very influential investor. LeBron is a very influential investor. I mean, LeBron is doing amazing things out in California, mostly around film.
Mhm.
And now every movie I take my son to, you see, the LeBron name as an investor in the movie, which is fine. It's fantastic. He's done a lot of great things. So yeah, I think I hope those personal financial advisors of the athletes are getting them involved in smart angel investing,
Mhm.
because obviously they're making, more than $10 million a year. I think Chris Paul is doing some investing as well. So, I hope those guys like Shaq are getting great advice because he's done really, really well with his investments.
Great. Well, we've got time for one more question. So, keeping your dad hat on for a minute, where would you like to see your efforts bear fruit in, say, 3, 5, maybe 10 years? And what kind of opportunities would those provide for our kids?
Well, I think Wilmington is in a great position as long as we don't screw it up, as long as we don't get conservative again. If you think of the amazing talent that Live Oak Bank and Encino and Aperture have started with, we're starting to see some untapped people move into new positions. We're having an event on March 24th. A lady, a female sales representative leader has joined another company, and she's going to be on stage. And so I think we're seeing a new generation of talent that wants to live in Wilmington and not just for the beach. You probably do this too. I talk more about the quality of place than I talk about quality of life, because my definition of quality of place and quality of life is very different than most people. You talk about your rock and roll days. I was raised on a basketball bus, so my whole life is about hip hop. I mean, I don't like classic rock. I'm an old white man at 51 years old. I got no hair, but I don't identify with classic rock and roll. I grew up on hardcore hip hop, and so what I'm trying to say is, we have Azalea Festival coming in Wilmington, and we've got Cypress Hill coming to Wilmington, North Carolina as one of the main acts. And we've had Ludacris, we've had Ice Cube, and
Mhm.
we've had these great acts. So I see that quality of place changing and evolving and being more inclusive. And those are all great things for the New South, which you're one of the kings of, sir. I'm learning from the best right here, Mr. Stanfield Gray.
I think we're learning from each other, but I appreciate that. Yeah, there's plenty of crowns to go around. My son and all of his friends, they all listen to hip hop.
Right,
I took him to a Playboy Cardi show in Atlanta, and that place was packed with 10,000
right,
17 to 24-year-olds of all ethnicities. It was great to
right,
see.
right.
Yeah, it's definitely a new world out there for them. Good. Well, Jim, I really appreciate you being here today and all the efforts you've done to grow that ecosystem in North Carolina and to plug it into what we're doing and what other folks are doing. And, let's keep that corridor going and keep those efforts strong, and let us know if we can help you in any way at Dig South.
Well, you're already helping me. We're having an event on March 24th on sales, and we are already promoting it on your website. And I'm eager to see you in May at your event at the Tech Summit. So I'm trying to put a little carpool together from Wilmington to make sure these guys get a good experience. So
I love it. Yeah,
when you hear the Wilmington crowd get a little loud, you know whose fault it was.
sure. Yeah. Well, my father was born in
Yep,
Wilmington.
that's right.
My family was from there originally. And you brought up boats earlier. In the summertime, he assembled boat kits and sanded
Right.
them, and finished them. And that was the job. So, yeah, good stuff. Well, thank you very much, Jim. Great to see you.
Thank you.
SouthPod is the first and foremost podcast created to tell the story of tech innovation in the American South. SouthPod is hosted by Dig South founder Stanfield Gray and produced by Dig South Tech Media. Visit digsouth.com for details and join our membership group at dignation.co. Join Dig Nation today and get your badge to Dig South Tech Summit, where leading global brands meet the smartest, most scalable startups. Dig South Tech Summit will be held May 11th through the 13th in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina at the College of Charleston TD Arena. Attend Dig South to learn more about Web3, NFTs, blockchain, fintech, health tech, e-com, investor capital, business growth, digital marketing, and so much more. Of course, come to network with the South's top tech talent. Visit digsouth.techsummit.com or just digsummit.com. I forgot, we've shortened that to digsummit.com to check out speakers, sponsors, and other details. Until next time, I'm Stanfield Gray, your host of South Pod Rise of a Region. Thank you for joining us.